what's it like for a team in the writer's room? Because when we're in the writer's room, it would be us three and 9 other chuckleheads. And do you feel like you function different as a team in a room, or do you feel like it's more individual?
I felt almost the same. Some situations were a little more tense than others. And I think you'd sort of naturally look to your regular writing partner to sometimes even translate or interpret for you.
Right.
If you have a line because we're so used to helping each other and improving on something,
right,
that you might tend to kind of I might tend to pitch it towards Ken.
Right.
Because he speaks the same language I do. Other than that, the funniest guy,
right,
or the funniest guys, or funniest girl, whatever, tends to push the show along.
I also find, too, that as partners, you kind of watch each other's back. And if Dave pitches something and I'm not sure if everybody heard it, it was a good joke, then I'll say, well, you know what Dave said.
Yes.
That
Ken will
kind
then
of thing.
break out of his shy cocoon, and step up.
Yeah.
Is that
exactly.
right?
Yeah. No, I tell you how we use each other was when we worked with you on Wings. And I worked one day and David worked a different day. And there would be some problem, some line that we were all struggling with. And I would say, the guy who really has a handle on this kind of joke is David. I think we should just leave this until tomorrow night.
That's
when
great.
David comes, David's going to have the fix for it.
Exactly, and then you can get a good night's sleep.
Exactly.
Eat dinner with the family, and then David would handle it.
Yeah,
That's how much faith he had in you.
It's that kind of buddy thing.
That
got us
watching
through. Got us through
watching each other's
together.
back.
He's watching your back.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've worked with both of you guys separately. And I remember you were in Cheers, and I was still kind of starting out. I was always envious that you guys, I'd walk in the Paramount lot, I'd look into the writer's room, I'd see Ken standing up, pitching something. And those were some great years. Is there anything on Cheers, any character, I don't want to put you on the spot, but that you just enjoyed, a favorite guy to write for?
For me, that's easy. I and it certainly played out for me later. I loved writing for Fraiser. I just really, I liked every character. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a character. You could have fun with each person.
Right.
And each person had a distinctive kind of, almost distinctive jokes. You were with Cliff, it was all blowhard humor. You're making up stupid facts and things like that, which was fun to do. But Fraiser was so sort of complex, and you could have so much fun with the language that I just always enjoyed it, and then was lucky enough to continue it on.
Right.
We both were.
I would have to say Al, the drunk at the bar. was probably my
also
favorite.
known as the man who said Sinatra.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I would agree with David. I always thought of Fraiser as kind of like an intellectual Daffy Duck.
Right. That's great. But going back for a second, Cliff, people ask all the time, those facts that he came up with, I've never even asked you guys, are those made up? Did you use research, or how did they come about?
I don't think there was much research involved in it. It was just, somehow a proper noun was thrown out. And
right.
Cliff would, say, well, the interesting fact about that, Sammy, and you just kind of riff on it.
I remember one time.
You'd make it bigger. You exaggerate it.
Right.
I know we'd do that.
Remember one time I was having dinner at a restaurant called Laurie's, the Prime Rib.
Yes.
And the waitress brought over the Yorkshire pudding, and she said Yorkshire pudding was really created when there was a beef famine, and that people would use the Yorkshire pudding to kind of soak up the gravy and kind of simulate the sensation of eating beef. So I thought, that's a good thing for Cliff. And we wrote that into a script. And at the time, there was a research company that would take every script and they would go through and double check all of the facts, Hitler,
before the internet,
former dictator, now deceased, that kind of thing. So I got a call from the research company, and they said, we can't find this anywhere. Where did you get this information? I said, oh, it's a waitress at Laurie's. And they go, waitress at Laurie's? I said, it's Cliff. It doesn't have to be right. It's Cliff.
They were the original Wikipedia.
Yeah.
That's what you did. You get a breakdown on every show, and it was literally like, just the kind of research you do yourself now. Just pop on.
That's funny.
Google something.
Yeah.
But
Babe Ruth, deceased baseball player.
Yeah, it was
really?
always in that.
I didn't know.
It was the most obvious fact would be next to that.
Now, Cheers
name.
was an ensemble comedy.
Right.
Fraiser, when this show was a family comedy. There's a difference. Obviously, there's a lot of characters in Cheers to service. Did you find it more time-consuming, more difficult than writing? Because basically, Fraiser is Fraiser, Niles, and Martin, and Daphne and Roz. But I always wonder about the big ensembles.
I found it easier, actually, because with Cheers, you could take a topic and just throw it out there, and you had 4 or 5 characters that all had different points of view.
Right, so you could riff on it more.
You could riff on it, and you had a certain freedom within that bar to bring people by. I mean, we always used to talk about putting Carla on a rope and swinging her through with the line, and then she'd disappear. So you had a kind of freedom of motion and freedom of the set that allowed you to bring someone in with a quick
it took the pressure off.
Take the pressure off the situation.
Did you find that it was less story intense because of that? It just eats up a lot of pages around, going around the bar.
It really depended on the story. It really did. There was one time, as an experiment, where David and I went to the Charles Brothers, and we had an idea. We wanted to do a show about Fraiser's bachelor party. And we wanted to do it with absolutely no outline. Just see where it goes and write to that. And you couldn't do that on tightly structured shows.
Right.
And we were able to do that on Cheers, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes. And we found story along the way, but we wanted the freedom to have guys at a bachelor party just talk about when they lost their virginity and different things like that.
So just make it a pure character piece.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have thin story within that, and the parallel was Lilith was having a bachelorette party,
right?
And that kind of spurred Fraiser in his own doubts about getting married to jealousy, so we had a narrative drive to it. But we were very free in terms of how the party itself was going to conduct.
Now, was this later in the run? Was the show
about midway?
About
actually,
midway, maybe 7th season.
And
so All the Girls I've Loved Before was the name of the episode.
That's great, and it's the kind of thing you can do with the luxury of success. Don't you think? Experiment. I don't think that would have been a first season or a second season show.